When we run the Angular application, it starts the execution from the startup module, that is app module. Startup module is called as app module. Angular application bootstrapping we begin from app module. App module will invoke app component. App component is the default component. App module will invoke app component. App module will invoke app component. App component is the default component. We can call it as parent component in the Angular application. App component is the default component. Default component in Angular applications. It is called as bootstrapping component also. This is also called as what? Bootstrapping component also. When you create the Angular application, by default, app module will be created, and in that app component also will be created. When we create any Angular application, app module will be created. That is the default module, and that is also called as startup module. That means when you run the Angular application, it will start from app module only. Now, can you see app module.ts? Which is the default. In the app module, which component it is loading by default? App component it is loading by default. So can I say app component is the default component? Can I say application execution will begin from the app component? Can I say application execution is beginning from the app component? Now guys, here there are several files available in the app module. What are those? Inside the SRC, there is an app folder. All our code we are going to write inside the app only. Remember that, guys. Remember that. Whatever the code that you do in the Angular application, everything you will do inside the SRC, inside the app module. App module already having 5 files. Can you read the file names now? App module already having the 5 files. Can you read the file names? app.component.css, app.component.html, app.component.spec.ts, app.component.ts, app.module.ts. Why is TS is available? What is .ts? What is the .ts here? Guys, come on. What is the .ts here? These all are the TypeScript classes, guys. These all are the TypeScript classes. TypeScript files. TypeScript files. Look at this. What are the files available? Got it? Fine. Now you see, in this Angular class, we are importing the ng module. Ng module is a decorator, it is a annotation. In the Java, we call it as a decorator. We are importing from Angular core package. Browser module, we are importing from platform browser. App component, we are importing from app component file. Right? We are importing them in the app module. App module bootstrapping the app component. App component.ts. Can you see what is app component.ts here? App component.ts. Can I say it is one TypeScript class? Can I say it is one TypeScript class? Can I say app component is one TypeScript class? In this component, can you see metadata, selector, template URL, style URLs? Can you read this file, guys, once? App component file, all of you. Can you read this app component file, all of you? Can you read this app component file, all of you? There is a selector, there is a template URL, there is a style URL. That means for this app component, app.component.html is the template file and app.component.cs is the styles file. So every component will have its own template, its own style. For every component we will have its own template file and its own CSS file. That is what we can see here. App.component.ts. For that we have a template URL, app.component.html, and we have a styles URL, app.component.css. And for this app component, there is a selector which is used to invoke this component. There is a selector which is used to invoke this component. Selector, template, style URL. Every component will have its own selector, its own templates, its own CSS file. What is the purpose of the selector? Selector is used to invoke this component. If you want to load this component, then you will use this selector. What is the template URL? Template URL represents this component belongs to which template file. It is belongs to app.component.html. Styles URL represents this component is using the styles from which CSS file, app.component.css. Export to class app component. Title is the app1. This is app component. For this app component, this is the CSS file and this is the HTML file. And the spec.ts, it is a test cases file. Component.ts, component.html, component.css. This component is having a selector. What is the name of the selector? App root. This selector we are invoking. This selector we are invoking in the index.html. Now, let me tell you the process, how this Angular application is running. In this Angular application, there is a file with a name called index.html. There is a file with a name called index.html. Inside this index.html, we are using app root selector. What we are using, guys? App root selector we are using in the index.html. App root selector is belongs to app component. App root selector is belongs to app component. It is belongs to app component. In the app component, what we have? app.component.css, app.component.html, app.component.css, app.component.html, app.component.ts, app.component.spec.ts. These are the files which are available in app component. These are the files are available in the app component. Okay. Now, whenever this index.html file is loaded, that is the default file in the Angular application. This index.html is having the app selector. App selector belongs to app root selector. App root selector belongs to app component. It is loading this app component. In this app component, first TS file will be loaded. The TS file is loading the HTML file. The HTML file will load the CSS. Okay. Let's go for component.css.h2. So what I will do here is I will write some property color is equal to red. For H2, I'm writing a red color. Sorry. For H2, I will write the color as red. App.component.html, sorry, H1, I have given H1. Go to the CSS file. Let me give the color as red for H1. Now, can you see the color text change it to red? Can you see the font color change it to red now? Where I have changed that font color? In the app.component.css. App.component.css. Now, let me go to app.component.html. Here I am writing H2. H2. This is our first Angular application. This is our first Angular application, H2. For H2, I want to apply blue color. Where I can apply the blue color for this HTML? This HTML belongs to app component. Now, what is the CSS file for the app component? App.component.css. Go to CSS, write the CSS for H2. I want to give the color as blue. Color, I want to give that color as blue color. I want to give the color as blue for this. Okay. Now, see, H1 tag content is displaying. H1 tag content is displaying in the red color. H2 tag content is displaying in the blue color. So where I am writing the CSS for this template, for every component we have a component.ts, component.html, component.css. Component.ts, it contains, component.cs means it contains the logic to handle the request and response. Component.ts contains the logic to handle the request and response. HTML is a template which contains the presentation logic. If you want to apply some styles for that presentation logic, we have a CSS file. Guys, do you understand now what is this app component and how the app component is executing? Simple. Suppose in this index.html, if I don't use this selector, if I remove this selector from here, then application will be restarted. I will stop the application, then app component will not be invoked. Is it invoking the app component now? If there is no selector, are you getting any output? Simply let me write it here. This is index.html file. Yes, index file is coming. Index file is loading. But is it loading the app component? Is it loading the app component, guys? Is it loading the app component or it is not loading the app component? Now can you tell me how to load a component in the Angular? How to invoke a component in the Angular? Hey. Can you tell me how to invoke a component in the Angular? First, selector we have to use. Where you can find the selector for the Angular app component? Where you can find the selector? Rituraj, can you unmute your mic? What is the default page in the Angular application? Index.html. Naresh, can you unmute your mic? I want somebody who can respond to my questions. Yeah, Rituraj.
Yes, sir. From the app component,
what is the default page in the Angular application? When you access the Angular application URL, which page will be loaded by default?
separate index.
Whenever you access localhost colon 4200, which file is loading by default? Index.html file is loading by default now.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah, so by default it's showing.
by default it is loading the index.html. Now, in the index.html is a welcome file. Index.html is a welcome file. Now, I want to access a component. What is a component in the Angular? What is a component in the Angular?
Component is a separate mod.
Come on, go ahead. What is a component in the Angular?
It's a separate module that means that performs some logic there. So you can add multiple components in the selector. So
Yes. No, one second. Angular component represents a small portion in the web page. Angular application is a collection of components. Okay?
Yes.
What is the default component in the Angular application?
app.
App component. Okay? Now, in the component, what are the files available? CSS, HTML, TS,
Yes.
spec TS.
Yes.
What is the purpose of .css?
To decorate the things of presentation.
To decorate the
That's like
things,
CSS.
to decorate our presentation part, we are using that CSS file. What is that HTML file?
So presentation, the view, that means all the view works we do in the HTML.
Right. So whatever the presentation logic you want to write for the app component, we have to write that in the app.component.html file.
HTML.
What
yes.
is that? What is that app.component.ts file?
TS is handling all request and response logic.
Yeah, application logic will be available in the TS file.
TS.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I want to invoke the app component from the index.html. Index.html file is the welcome page. Whenever you run the Angular application, whenever you access the Angular application, index.html file will be loaded in the browser. From the index.html file, I want to access the app component.
Yes.
How can I access the app component from the index.html?
In the
By using
app root, you will
selector.
find.
By using a selector. So you need to, today the selector name is app root. Tomorrow the selector name I can change, na? So you need to tell that. If you want to invoke the component, you need to use the selector of the component. Where you can find the selector of the component? Where you can find the selector of the component? In the TS file. In the component.ts file, you can find the selector. Now, in the app component, can you tell me what is the selector of this component? What is the selector of this component? App-root is the selector. App-root is the selector.
Selector.
Okay, is this clear for you, man?
Yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Guys, observe carefully. I'm telling you that what is a app component. App component is the default component in the Angular application. Whenever we create the Angular application, by default, app component will be created. App component is the default component in the Angular application. In Angular application, we can have any number of modules. In the Angular application, we can have any number of modules. When we run the Angular application, it starts the execution from the startup module, that is app module. Angular application bootstrapping will begin from app module. App module will invoke app component. App module will bootstrap app component. App component is the default component in the Angular application. In this app component, we can see below files: module.ts, component.ts, component.html, component.css, component.spec.ts. Okay, module.ts file contains the app module logic. Then component.ts file contains the definition of the app component. And in the Angular application, we can have any components. It should contain at least one component that is called app component. Selector is used to invoke that component. Template URL represents presentation logic file of that component. Styles URL represent CSS files of that component. Component.html, component.css, component.spec.ts. Spec.ts file spec.ts file contains the test cases logic. Okay, the test cases file should have spec.tss file extension. The file contains test cases for the app component unit testing. In the Java, we will use a JUnit for unit testing. In this Angular also we can do the unit testing by using this spec.ts. Okay, when we run the Angular application, it will load index.html file as welcome file. In Angular application, index.html file will act as welcome file. Angular application will load index.html by default. When we access Angular application URL in browser, in the browser, it will load index.html file. In the index.html file, we are using app component selector. In index.html file, we are using app component selector to invoke app component. How we are using app-root, that is the selector of the app component. So if you use this tag, then index.html file is loading. That index.html file is loading the app component at TS file loading HTML loading CSS. Now do you understand how the Angular application is getting executed now? Now do you understand how this Angular application is executing now? Why the app component is loading by default? Now go to index.html default file. It is available in the Angular project, index.html default file. This is index.html. Inside this index.html, I want to load the app component. Go to app component selector. What is the selector? App root is the selector. Now go to index.html, use the app selector, app component selector, that is app-root. Now let's close this. I am invoking app component here. Now see here, refresh this file. App component content is printing. Is the app component content is printing? Yes or no? Who is invoking the app component? Programmer invoking the app component or index.html invoking the app component? Index.html is invoking the app component. How to invoke a component in the Angular? Can you guys tell me how to invoke a component in the Angular? By using selector. Are you guys able to understand this? Right. Can we create one more component? As of now we are having one default component which is created by Angular, which is called app component. Can I create our own component? Yes, we can create. Before going to do that, can you see? This is app component. This message from app component. I'm just writing H1. Refresh this page. Yeah, application stopped, guys. This message from app component. I want to create my own component called welcome component. Okay. In order to create a component, ng generate component welcome. Generate component welcome. I am creating my own component in the Angular. Now see here, when I create my own component, what are the files created? Where this welcome component created? Is it created inside the app or outside the app? Welcome component created inside the app component, outside the app component? Outside, inside only, man. Inside the app component. Can you see the files available in the welcome component? Can you see the files available in the welcome component? Welcome component.css, welcome component.html, welcome component.spec, welcome component.ts. Okay, welcome component.ts. Let's go for welcome component.ts. What is the selector of the welcome component now? App-welcome. App-welcome. App component.css, nothing available. App component.html. Now, app component.html. Now I am going to write here h2. This message from welcome component. I am writing h2. CSS. For h2, I will give green. For h2, I will give the green. h2 color, I am giving as a green. In the welcome component. Welcome component.html. This message from welcome component. Okay. Let's run this application, guys. ngsaw. Let's run this application. What is the command to run the Angular application? ngsaw. It is going to run on the live server with the port number 4200. It is going to run on the live server with the port number 4200. When you access this application, it is going to load the index.html. Inside the index.html, we are accessing the app component selector. So that app component will be loaded. App component will be loaded. I have created one more component called welcome. But tell me, is it loading the welcome component? Is it printing the message of the welcome component? Is it printing the message of the welcome component? It is not printing. Why? Why it is not printing? Come on. Are we invoking the welcome component or we are not invoking the welcome component? We are not invoking the welcome component. Now do you know how to invoke the welcome component? Do you know how to invoke the welcome component? Now tell me, I want to invoke the welcome component. How to invoke a component in the Angular? Now I am going with Amarendra Rao. Can you unmute your mic, Amarendra? Can you unmute your mic, Amarendra? Or else Adam Krishna. Can you unmute your mic? Or Chinmay Pavtekar, Deepashri, Koivi.
Yeah, hi. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi Chinmay. So now tell me, how many components we have in our application?
We have two components.
One is app component, another one is welcome component.
Welcome
Who created app component? Who created welcome component?
App created is by default created by Angular, and
Okay.
the welcome component we have created.
We have created. Now, how to access a component in the Angular? How to invoke a component in the Angular?
We have to add the selector. Means we have to get the selector from the welcome.component.ts file.
Okay.
We have to add into the HTML file.
We have to add in the HTML file. Okay. Perfect. Guys, now here app component we are accessing from index file. App component we are accessing from index file. Now I have a welcome component. Now tell me, welcome component I want to access in the index.html directly, or I want to access from the app component. From where I have to access the welcome component? Do you want me to access directly from the index.html, or you want me to access from the app component?
From app component, I think.
App component is the parent component.
Yeah.
You understand my point now?
Yeah.
App component is the parent component. So any component that you create in the Angular application will be act as a child component for the app component. So first Angular application is loading from the index.html. In the index.html we are invoking the app component. App component will invoke our child component. Right. Now see here, app welcome I am creating. So now what is there in the app component.html? Do I have the selector of the Do I have the selector of the welcome component or not?
Right.
Exactly. Now, can you see welcome message is coming?
Yes. Got it, sir.
You got it now? Why it is coming in the green color? Why it is coming in the red color?
Because we have configured a CSS file for the
CSS.
Yeah.
CSS is the same for everything, or CSS is separate for every component?
Separate for every component.
Exactly. Now, for the welcome component, we have welcome component.html, welcome component.css. For the app component, we have app component.html, app component.css. Now see, actually H2 means in the app component blue color, but in the welcome component H2 means green color. So here blue color is coming, green color is coming.
That is green color is coming for
That means
welcome component.
welcome component CS is applicable for the welcome component HTML. Now do you understand that?
Yes.
We can create any number of components. Now, can I create one more component for clarity? Can I create a grid component now?
Yes.
Can you tell me the command to create a grid component? Can you tell me the command to create the grid component now? ng generate component grid. ng generate component grid. Got it? What is the purpose of this command?
It will create a component.
Component means how many files will be created?
5 files are created: CSS, HTML, spec, TS, and TS.
4 files will be created. 4 files will be created and 1 file will be updated.
Yeah.
Okay. Now see here, I'm creating a grid component. So grid is a parent component or grid is a child component?
It is a child component of app.
Now you see how many files are created and how many files are updated?
4 files are created and 1 file are updated.
1 file is updated.
That is TS.
TS file. That is a module file updated. Grid component.html, grid component.spec.ts, grid component.ts, grid component.css. Okay. So what is the purpose of grid component.html?
To represent the
Presentation logic. Can I say it is a template file of the grid component?
yes, you can.
So grid component, grid.component.html, this is a template file for the grid component.
Grid component.
Grid component.spec.ts. What is the purpose of grid component.spec.ts?
It is for
Test
testing
case,
purpose.
testing purpose. So leave it. Grid component.grid.component.ts. This is the main file for us. What is this component.ts?
For response and
Request.
Yeah.
For sending the data and receiving the data from the template, we will write the logic in the TS file.
Yes, and set
What is
also.
this?
Yes.
What is the grid.component.css?
For the
Styles for, if I write a style in the grid.component.cs, is it applicable for all the HTMLs or it is applicable for only grid.component.html?
only green component.
Grid.component.html. Now you understand my point now?
Yes.
Yeah, now go to grid component. Can you see all the files? Grid component.css, grid component.html, grid component.spec.ts, grid component.ts. Okay, chalo. Now, grid component.html. I want to write one message here. H2, good morning. I am from grid component. Good morning. I am from grid component H2. Grid.component says, can I apply a style for H2 tag now?
Yes.
Can I apply a style for H2 component now? Where I need to write the style?
Grid.component.css file.
Exactly. So can you tell me how to write a style?
Yeah.
H2 color. Which color? Can we go with brown color?
Yes.
Right. Brown color for H2. Now, if I run my application, grid component will be invoked or grid component will not be invoked.
Will not invoke.
So do you know how to invoke the grid component now?
Yeah, we have to go to the that app.component.ts file or HTML file, and we have to add the selector of the green component there.
Where I can find the selector of the grid component?
In grid.component.ts file.
Now, what is the selector? App-grid. Now go to app.component.html. Here already I am invoking the welcome component. Similarly, I will invoke the grid component also. Is it clear now?
Yes, yes.
So total how many components are available?
Three
Three components. One is the parent component and two are the child components. Child components I'm accessing from the parent component. Parent component I'm accessing from the index.html. Are you getting my point? Now run this program. ng-serve. What is the purpose of ng-serve command? What is the purpose of ng-serve command?
To run the application.
Which is used to run the Angular application. ng-serve is used to run the Angular application. Compile the application and run the application. Compile the application and run the application. Now it is running. Oh, so totally how many components are loaded?
Three components.
This message from app component, this message from welcome component, good morning from the grid component. So total 3 components are executed or not? Come on guys.
Yes, yes.
Easy or difficult?
Yeah, it is easy, sir.
So now, so before attending this Angular, do you know what is Angular, how to work with Angular, or only first time you are listening?
I'm listening for the first time.
Are you comfortable with this Angular?
Yes, I'm pretty much comfortable, sir.
Pretty much comfortable. Okay. So can you say that you are a full stack developer after 10 days?
Yes, sir. I can say that.
Yes, good. Good. So now you understand. Now you understand what is Angular, how to create the Angular application, and how to create the component, and how to run the Angular application. Now we can create components in the Angular. We can create component in the Angular using below command. We can create component in Angular by using below command. ng generate component, and you can give component name. Component name. When we create the component, it will generate 4 files. When we create a new component, it will generate 4 files like below. It will generate 4 files like below. Okay? Right. For example, if you are creating a component with a name called grid, then it is going to create the files. What is that file? What is the component name I am giving? Grid, na? Let me copy these things. It is creating 5 files. It is creating and it is updating 1 file. Note the components we are creating. The components which we are creating will act as child components for app component. Child components will invoke from the app component. Child components we will access from app component using selector. Are you guys able to understand this? How to create a component, what files will be created, and how to invoke a component? We can create component in Angular using below command, ng generate component name. When we create a new component, it will generate 4 files like below. So create this. This file will be created. This file will be created. This file will be created. This file will be created, and this file will be updated. The components which we are creating will act as child components for app component. Child components we will access from app component using selector. You got it? Right. Anybody not able to understand this process? Anybody not able to understand this process? Guys, come on. Now, if you see a web page, now let me take this as a web page. This web page is divided into multiple parts, guys. This is a menu, okay? And here we are having a header part, and here we are having a footer part, and this is a body. Now this will be represented by using header component. This will be represented by using header component, and this will be represented by using footer component, and this will be represented by using body component, and this will be represented by using menu component, side nav component, or we can say menu component. Guys, now do you understand? A web page is a collection of components. Can we say that web page is a collection of components? Can we say that web page is a collection of components? Yes, we can say that web page is a collection of components. So if I create these many components, where we will invoke all these components? Every component will have its own selector. Then where we are going to invoke these components now? App component. By using these selectors, we will use these components in the app component. You see, this is my app component. I'm invoking app welcome, app greet. Two components I'm invoking in the app component. Okay. So with this, you understand how to work with Angular application now. How to work with Angular application. Are you pretty much clear with what we discussed so far? And notes also available for you. Okay. Create welcome component and greet component. Access welcome and greet components in the app component like below. Invoke welcome component and greet component in app component like below. So what I'm doing here, I'm just writing like this. App component.html. This file is app.component.html. In this file, I'm writing the selectors of the app component and the greet component. If you want to apply styles for the HTML, every component is having its own CSS file to apply the styles. Every component having its own CSS file to apply styles for template logic. Every component having its own CSS file to apply styles for that component template logic. Apply styles for that component template logic. That component related template logic. You got it? So with this, we understood what is a component, how to create the component, and how to invoke the component, what is a child component, and what is a parent component. Here, I have two components. One is welcome, and another one is greet. Welcome component. And greet component. This is invoking the welcome component and invoking the greet component. Now, this is parent component. It is acting as parent component, child 1 and child 2. Child 1 and child 2. Child 1 and child 2. Parent component invoking child components. Parent component invoking child components. Index.html invoking parent component. index.html invoking parent component invoking child components. So this is what we have developed in the today's session. Look at this diagram. We created Angular application, index.html file created, that is a welcome file. Index.html invoking the app component using app selector. App component is invoking the child components by using child selectors. So a Angular application is nothing but collection of components. So we are going to develop a application like this. Header component will be available, menu component will be available, body component will be available, footer component will be available. So 1, 2, 3, 4, total 4 components are available. We will access all these 4 components. We will access all these 4 components from the app component. We will access all the 4 components from the app component. Are you guys clear with this? Are you guys clear with this? Header, body, footer, menu. Header, body, footer, menu. Header, footer, body, menu. 4 components. All these 4 components are called as the child components for the app component. These 4 components we need to invoke from the parent component. Samjhe? Next, in the tomorrow session, we will talk about data binding. I mean, tomorrow means Monday. Tomorrow session means Monday session. Right, guys? Can you please practice these things before coming to Monday session? Can you please practice this before coming to Monday session? Right? And tomorrow we have a workshop, guys. I think already we have completed that workshop with you. That is deploying the application into AWS cloud. How to deploy Spring Boot application into AWS cloud. If you are interested, you can attend for this workshop. It is free for everybody. So please inform to your friends. Please inform to your friends. Take a screenshot of this photo and keep it as your WhatsApp status. So tomorrow we have this workshop. It's a manual without EBS. Without EBS, it's a manual process. Creating a jar file, deploying the jar file into EC2, running that jar file in the EC2, that I am going to explain in the tomorrow session. Okay? Please take this screenshot of this photo, keep it as your WhatsApp status. Everybody can attend, it's free for all. You can inform to your friends also, they can attend this workshop. Yeah, next week I will conduct the Redis workshop, guys. Next week I will conduct the Redis workshop. Tomorrow we have AWS deployment workshop. Tomorrow we have AWS deployment workshop. Next week we will conduct the Redis workshop also. You got my point now? Yes, fine. Thank you. I will upload these notes to our website, Angular notes. So please go through these notes and practice before coming to Monday session. Monday we are going to talk about data binding. Data binding nothing but how to send the data. How to send the data from component to template and template to component. By using data binding technique, we can send the data from component to template and template to component. Good. Fine, guys. Yeah, Rituraj, what is your doubt?
Yes, sir. I have seen somewhere that selector here in selector we put some array. The components we can pass is a comma separator.
I will check that and let you know, sir. One component will not have multiple selector. One component will have only one selector.
Okay. That means might be in the combination when you put it.
Maybe they are giving some
component.
They are giving some alias name for the selector.
Okay.
You may check
and for the JPA, for the JPA we have some videos because I lost one session because I was in travel.
Sure, sir. I will check it. Okay. So you understand what is Angular and how to create the project, how to create the component, how to invoke the component.
Yes.
I think these notes will help you a lot, guys.
Yes.
Fine. So please practice this before coming to Monday session. Tomorrow workshop. If you are interested, you can attend for this workshop tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.